So majority of the components of CyberArk are Windows based only. We will also go ahead with the Unix based components as well, but the Vault is the main component of main component of CyberArk deployment. Reason being, it is basically the core of everything. So whatever the account onboarding takes place, or whatever the integration takes place, whatever the recordings takes place, that sits in the Vault. So you can see here, this is basically called the CA console, or PA console, private app console, that provides you access to the Vault. Okay, it's just an application to access the Vault. If I log in over here, you can see there are a lot of boxes. These are called the safes. So let me give you a very simple analogy to understand that. Just feel free to stop me if something is going overhead, or you are not able to make it, if you are unable to follow me anything. Let's say you have a bank. Okay, you have a bank. In the bank there is a strong room. Okay, so in the strong room you have lot of lockers. Okay, so there is a bank. In that bank there is a strong room, and there are lot of lockers. Now lockers belongs to different customers, I would say. So you might have noticed that in the bank there are two keys. If you want to access any locker in the bank, you would have the two keys. The first lies with the customer, the second key lies with the bank. Okay, once you put in or key in both the keys, the customer key as well as the bank key, you should be able to access the locker, and only the legitimate users can access the locker. So let's say if there are 100 lockers for an example. Okay, every user has its own locker. So I have my own locker, you have would have your own locker, some people would have its own locker. As long as you have the two keys available with you, you can access that particular locker. Okay, so that is a very common scenario, that is a very common scenario in most of the banks. I would say all the banks, that we have a common strong room. In the strong room we have different lockers that are intended for different customers. Okay, so this is the same analogy is there in the Vault. In the Vault we have a vault. Vault is basically kind of strong room, you can say. Okay, in that strong room there are a lot of safes. Okay, now safes would have its members. So just like in lockers, you might be having something like cash, ornaments, some documents. You can put anything as you want in the locker. Similarly, we have in CyberArk Vault, which is basically kind of strong room, or I would say the overall storage of CyberArk. In that we have different safes. That safe could have the dedicated member. So let's say if I have a safe for Wintel people, so only Wintel people would have access to that particular safe. That means whatever the accounts that are onboarded in that safe. Okay, whatever the accounts that are onboarded on the safe, that would be visible by only the Wintel people. So the Unix people would have its own safe, the Wintel people would have its own safe, the database people would have its own safe. So every safe would have a dedicated member. Okay, this is basically called segregation of duties, that only the legitimate member would be able to access the accounts that are onboarded in their safe, nothing apart from that. So here also we have two keys, just like we have customer key and bank key. Here also we have two key called private key, and we have public key. Just open up. Okay, let's say this is my vault. Okay, in the vault I have a server key as well. I have recovery public key, recovery private key as well. Once these two keys are matched, then I would be able to see the password. Okay, let's say I have onboarded an account in Safe. We will see more in details once we do the BAU stuff, or I would say the operational stuff, but I'm just telling you. Let's say I have onboarded this account, administrator, and the password of this administrator is, for an example, Wipro @123. So if I'm a member of this particular safe, let's say the safe name is Wintel Safe. If I'm a member of this particular safe called Wintel Safe, I would be able to see the password and the username called administrator, and the password called Wipro @123. So basically it has two keys to encrypt. Over here you can see that the encryption happens. You would have the public key, you would have the private key. Okay, and then you would these two keys would be matched, and only once you are a member of that particular safe, then you can retrieve the password of that particular account, which is whichever you are onboarding in Cyberark. So we will see more in details. I'm just giving an overview about it, but this is how the process works. So just like in bank, we have two keys, the customer key as well as the bank key. As long as you are able to have those two keys together, then only you would be able to access the locker. The same happens in CyberArk as well. As long as you have the private key and public key, you would be able to access the accounts. So it's not something that is physically available to you, the public key. It's more of like the encryption that happens on the back end. Okay, just for knowledge purpose, I'm sharing this thing. So why Vault is so important? Because it is the critical component of CyberArk. So whenever you onboard anything, onboarding is nothing but adding the password of the accounts in the CyberArk. Okay, the onboarding always refers to adding. Let's say if I need to, if I need to, integrate Windows Server. So what I'll do, whatever the accounts that are there in the Windows Server, I will add it in the CyberArk. So the CyberArk Vault will manage the password of that. Manage in the sense that it will periodically change the password. It will periodically verify the password on the agreed frequency. So I do not need to retain a copy of password. I need not to have the copy of passwords of my Windows server. It is the PAM or CyberArk which will have the copy of passwords in the safes. So here, let's say for an example, these are the safes. Okay, I create a safe over here, test safe. Okay, now I have created a test safe. If I show you here, owners are nothing but the members. Okay, now the members, let's say I have logged in as an administrator here. So now you can see that administrator has all the rights, retrieve file from the safe. If an administrator log into CyberArk, he should be able to see whatever the accounts passwords are there in this test safe. So whatever the accounts that are sitting in the test safe, that can be seen by administrator. Reason being, administrator is the owner of that safe or member of the safe. Similarly, if I create some another safe and I add another people as well, they would have access to that safe, and whatever the accounts that are onboarded in that particular safe, they would be able to see the password. Okay. So now it's not just the onboarding, which is it's not just the password which sits in the safe or the vault, I would say. The overall storage is something is the vault. So be it password, be it the account detail like username, what is the account name, what is the address, what is the password, what is the different value of that particular account, what is the FQDN or host name or an IP address, or if it is a database, what is the port number. Everything would be sitting in the safe or the vault. So vault is the ultimate storage engine for the entire CyberArk deployment. Then we have recordings. So for every action you perform in CyberArk, if you're connecting to a Windows server, you're doing some sort of things, your action would be thoroughly recorded. And once it is recorded, we have seen yesterday that the recordings are uploaded to the vault. Yeah. So now you can see that Whatever the actions you're performing on the system, if I'm connecting to a database, Windows server, Unix server, router, switches, anything from the CyberArk. So this is a component of CyberArk PSM which records the session. It will record everything whatever I'm doing on this target system, and the recording would be uploaded to the vault. Okay, so it just not capture the visual recording, the DVDR recording, like just like we used to watch the videos. It basically captures the DVDR recording. It also captures the keystrokes. If I'm doing some sort of work on a console based target system like Unix, it will capture my keystrokes and it will upload it in the vault. So whatever the commands that I have executed on the target machine, that would be thoroughly uploaded in the vault. So this is something that importance of Vault, that it hosts the onboarding, it hosts the recordings, it holds the audit logs like keystrokes, logging, visuals, everything. And whatever the integration you do with the CyberArk, let's say if you are integrating your Active Directory with CyberArk, you're integrating your mailing server SMTP with CyberArk, you're integrating your network time protocol. This is something like if you want to sync up your domain clock with CyberArk, then in that case you need to do the NTP integration. I will explain you that. If you want to integrate your syslog like sim server, you might have Splunk, QRadar, you might have heard about it. So if you want to integrate that part, that would also happen from the vault. If you want to generate a backup of your vault, so that would backup of your CyberArk, like whatever the reports or recordings are there, onboardings are there, that would be done by vault as well. Okay, so every integration would also happen from the vault. Connectivity, all components talk to the vault. So whatever the components we have discussed yesterday, that is CPM, PWA, PSM, PSMP, OPM, AIM, that all talks to your vault. Vault is the single point of contact for all the components. The PWA would also talk in the sense that we require a connectivity to the vault from these components. So there is a standard port called 1858 from which all communication happens from all the components to the to the vault. This is the main port of CyberArk wherein all components will talk to the vault 1858. If we are deploying CyberArk, that means we need to ensure that all components are able to reach out. This 1858 port is open from the components to the CyberArk vault. So AD integration would also happen, SMTP, everything we will see one by one in detail. Okay. Now the important thing is the vault will be sitting in the most secure location in the data center. What is secure location? Secure location is something which is not exposed to any public infrastructure. So let's say if I have a web server wherein I am which is basically public facing. Public facing is something this thing. Let me show you. It is basically internet facing domain controller without a VPN. So whatever the thing which are we're having the internet facing thing, that are termed as public facing. So the servers of your organization are public facing because they need to connect to they need to connect to the external world. That's the reason why they are termed as public facing. So the vault will not be that type. Okay, vault would be sitting in the core infra region of your data center. So if you have a data center, let's say for an example, it would not be a member of any domain. If you are installing a vault server, it will not be a member of any domain. It will not be public facing. That means it cannot be accessed outside your organization. If I want to access, if I'm working in for an example, if I'm working in some bank, I have installed vault in that particular bank, so I would not be able to access that vault outside my bank infrastructure at all. There is no VPN that would allow me to access that vault server at all. It will not be coming under the public connectivity. Okay, I can only access that vault once I'm inside that data center, and I can do the stuff only when I'm inside the data center or in the same IP range. So secure location is nothing but secure location is something wherein we do not have the public facing uh, uh, what do we call public facing IPs for that particular server. So it would be completely inside the data center, and it would always be a physical server. Why we are using a physical server for the vault? Because it hosts everything of your CyberArk deployment. It hosts recording, it hosts all the password. Let's say if I'm making it a VM, a virtual machine, or a cloud machine. Okay, so what happens in the virtual machines? I have an option to take a snapshot. For example, I have this virtual machine. For example, this is my vault server. Now I can capture a snapshot of it. I can simply take a snapshot of this. I can save it with me. So if in snapshot or a copy, somebody copies your vault server, that means your secret is compromised. Whatever the secret is sitting in the vault, it would eventually be compromised, because you have configured the vault on the virtual machine. So the virtual machine is not something which is which is something a recommended way of installing vault. It should always be a physical server. In physical server, there is no scope of taking a snapshot. So if you worked in Windows, you might have seen that there is a scope of taking a snapshot. So in case something comes, something bad happens, or maybe you've goofed up something, you have a chance to roll back those settings to the snapshot. So for the vault, it should not be the case. The vault would always be a physical server. It will not be a virtual server at all. So because in the virtual machine we have a cloning, we have a snapshot that is possible. So your entire secret would be compromised. In cloud also, you can basically, if you have access the cloud, maybe if you have accessed any server in cloud, so there are keys given to you. There are some keys given to you through which you can access the cloud server. So very likely, maybe today or from tomorrow, you would be accessing AWS cloud, in which you would be accessing the instances, or the server instances. So there would be some sort of keys called the private keys. If the private keys are compromised, then that means your cloud instance can also be compromised. Since we are dealing with very critical data in the vault, we do not want that scenario to happen. Hence, we want to keep it on-prem in the sense that whatever the company data center is there, we will always install the vault within that data center only. We will not go outside on cloud or virtual machine. We will not be doing on the virtual machine or cloud like that. Then these are the layers of security of a vault. Okay, layers of securities are nothing but how this vault is protected, because as I said, it's the most critical part of your vault, CyberArk. So how would you be able to safeguard it? The first is the authentication. Authentication is something, the way you log into the vault, how you would log in. So there is an LDAP authentication. Let's say I have a domain ID in my organization. I can make use of it to log into the vault. I can use RSA authentication, Oracle SSO, SAML, Radius, or maybe whatever the kind of authentication I have enabled in my organization. The same I can use for the CyberArk authentication as well. There is nothing like that. I need to come up with any other authentication solution. As long as I have whatever the native authentication methods I have in my organization, I can use the same. Then segregation of duty. Segregation of duty, just like we have discussed, that only the customer or only the user would have access to their safe. The Wintel people would only be able to access their safe. No one from the Wintel would be able to access their safe. Okay, just like as long as you are a member of particular safe, then only you would be able to access your safe or see the accounts that are there in the safe. So this is called segregation of duty. File encryption is nothing but whenever you onboard any account. Okay, I don't get confused with the onboarding term. Okay, we will see more in details, so that will clarify your doubts. Onboarding is like if you are storing some password in vault, that means it would be encrypted right after you store in vault. So it would have its unique key. As long as you are a member of that particular safe, that means you have the private key available with you and you can see the password of it. Network isolation is something you can completely isolate the vault server from rest of the network. Let's say if there are these servers in my organization, there is a vault PVW. Let's assume this is a complete data center, and these are the servers which are there in the organization. Okay, so every server has its unique IP address, and if I want to access any one of them, I can just MSTSC and I can put IP address, and I can do an RDP. As long as I have access on this particular servers, I can key in the IP address, I can punch in my username password, and I'm in. But in the case of vault, it would be network isolated. That means it will not be defined in the public network at all. You will not be, everyone in the organization will not be able to access vault, neither they would be able to see the vault as well. It would not be sitting in the public IP range. Okay, also there is an IP based access control. You will decide that from which IP your vault would be accessible. Let's say if there are four Cyberark administrators, so only from their machine or from their workstation the vault would be accessible. You can configure that thing. Tamper proof audibility, that means you cannot delete the logs. Once the logs are created in Cyberark vault, you will not have any provision to get them deleted at all. Let's say if you have done something wrong on Cyberark and the logs are populated, so you will not be able to delete them at all. Firewall takeover is nothing but, let's say if I have a firewall over here, this is my laptop. Guys, feel free to stop me if you are not able to catch up anything. I will try to reiterate in a different way. So this is my firewall, guys. This is my system firewall, the laptop firewall. So I have some inbound traffic allowed. You can see here that I have certain ports allowed over here. There, this is kind of mix and match of UDP and TCP over here, and you can see here that yeah. So this is the low. These are the ports which are allowed, or I should say the traffic which is allowed. Similarly, I can send some traffic as well. These are the ports which are allowed over here. Okay. These are the ports which are allowed on which I can send the traffic from my system. Okay. So what happens once you install the CyberArk Vault in a server? The local firewall has no relevance at all. Let's say if I want to allow any port, I can simply add a rule over here. I can specify the port number which I want to allow, click on next, and that port would be allowed from my laptop. The same would not happen for the vault. So in the vault, once you install the vault in a Windows server, the local firewall would be entirely governed by the CyberArk. You cannot add any traffic like inbound and outbound traffic from the firewall console, just like I was doing here. It would be entirely taken care by CyberArk going onward. So we will see that in real time, that how exactly the firewall takeover takes place. Now ways to access the vault. Okay, how you would access the vault? So just like if you want to access any kind of Windows server, you need to have the RDP. Okay, you need to have the RDP client available in your machine. If you want to access Unix machine, you need to have the PuTTY client on your machine. If you want to access any database, you need to have the SQL client on your machine. So just like for the vault, we have an application called Privateer client. This is the Privateer client application. We will install it once we install the Vault. After that, we will install this Privateer client as. So to install the Vault, you require this application. It is basically an Windows-based interface through which you can access your Vault. Then PVWA or Password Vault Web Access. So we have seen a URL yesterday wherein we can through which also we can access the Vault. We will see all of them. Then there is a PACLI. PACLI is nothing but a scripting language of Cyberark, which is called Private R Client Command Line Interface, and SDKs. Okay, SDKs are nothing but you can do some sort of automation or work, and you can basically communicate to the world. Then to install the vault, what are the prerequisites you need to have? Okay, prerequisites in that, in the sense that what are the hardware thing, whatever the software thing, or whatever the resources that you need to have available in with you before actually installing the vault. So Vault can be installed in Windows 2012, R2, Windows 2016, Windows 2008. These are the recommended CyberArk, Windows OS flavors in or versions, I would say, in which you can install the Vault. Should always be workgroup or standalone server. So as you can see here, so now you can see this is a domain server. It's not a workgroup server. So all the components can be domain, but only the vault should always be a workgroup server. It should not be a member of any domain because it increases the attack surface. So as a recommended practice, or I should say best practice from the vendor perspective or vendor recommendation, it should always be a workgroup server. Clean OS is something that it should always be installed on a fresh copy of OS. Let's say if I have to install a Vault, I will build a new server. I will install the operating system in it, like Windows 2000, Windows 2012 R2, Windows 2016, 16, or Windows 2008 R2 in it, and then I will install the Vault. I will not install any other application apart from the Vault. Like you might have seen in the organization that they have multiple applications installed on every server, like antivirus server, or any kind of monitoring services are there. So that should not be the case. The server which is basically intended for Vault installation, the only thing which would be installed is the Vault, nothing apart from that. Okay, then no agent work, no GPO, no DNS details, ILO to be installed, that we will see in more in detail. So let me start from the beginning itself, that what do you need, to how do we install the Vault here. So that would be our first thing. Let me create a fresh machine for us here. So guys, one thing, like if you have your own laptop which is equipped with good infrastructure, or I would say good hardware resources, you can parallelly build a lab there as well. I can assist you for building a lab. I will share you the VMware license and everything, and CyberArk license as well. So if you have a good hardware, like at least 20 GB of RAM or maybe SSD drive, so you can start working on your workstation as well. That's not a problem. I'm creating a fresh server over here, and we will see how the step by steps, what are the things that we require for installing the Vault. So let's wait for 2 or 3 minutes. We would have the new operating system created. So this is basically Windows 2016 server that we are creating as of now, and we will see the step-by-step procedure which is needed for the vault. I will tell you that why do we require everything, that whatever we are doing in this vault setup.
I have one question.
Yeah, please.
How we can decide how much RAM or how many drives will be for the vault?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. So let me show you. There are three types of deployment. So first is small scale deployment. Second is middle scale deployment. The third is high scale deployment. So for an example, you need to decide like how many users are there in your environment. There is docs.cyberark, which will let you know to decide the hardware sizing. So this is an open source portal through which you can decide the hardware sizing, that how much storage you would require or how much hardware you would require. So you can see there is a system requirements here and recommended server specification. It is not just for the vault, for each and every server, like PVW is there, CPM is there, PSM is there, PSMP is there. So whatever the server that the components you are setting up, you can refer the specification here. Now, if you have less than 1,000 accounts being onboarded in CyberArk, that means it would be termed as small scale implementation. If you are onboarding 1,000 or 20,000 accounts in CyberArk, that would be termed as mid-range implementation. If you are onboarding 20,000 to 1,000, 1 lakh accounts, that means it would be large implementation, and anything more than 1 lakh would be very large implementation. So accordingly, the hardware sizing would also vary. You can see this in this small scale, you would require quad core processor, 8 GB of RAM, 2 by 80 GB SATA hot swappable drives, RAID controller, network adapter. Similarly, for mid size, you would need this much amount of hardware sizing. So you need to decide with the with the client for which you are deploying the solution, that what would be the how many accounts that we are planning to onboard in CyberArk. And it is always good to go with n plus 1. Let's say if your environment qualifies for a small scale, go for the mid scale, because let's say if some expansion happens in the later phase of time, you would have an options to accommodate the additional accounts in the same infrastructure. You do not need to reinstall everything or recreate the hardware again. So better go with n plus 1. So this you can refer CyberArk. It has everything from installation perspective, administration perspective, automation perspective. It has every bit of data available with us.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So now we are done with this this thing, server setup. Let me start this server. Okay, so this is a new server, brand new server that we have created. Okay, let me close this, the license, I need to fix that part as well. This is a new Windows server that we have created. Okay, it's not a member of any domain. As you can see here, it's a fresh workgroup server. Okay, it's a workgroup server. Now the thing is, like, first and foremost is we need to make the IP static. As of now, the IP is not static for this server. For Vault, the IP should always be static because we are not adding it in the we are not installing any domain name services. So as long as we have a static IP, we will not run into a problem. Yeah, it has a static IP, but let me change it a bit. Okay, you will not have the DNS server details because we are not installing any DNS services. So we have the static IP in place. And for installing, what are the setup files we require for installing the Vault? So let me just, before we do, let me install some VMware tools so we can import the we can import the setup files here. I will let you know that what are the setup files we require. Let's restart this machine. So now I need to import the setup files here. To import the setup files, I need to map this drive as well. Let me check that how we can do that. So as of now, the drive mapping is not done. Let me do it right away as well. And let me just stop the machines which are already installed. So we will do it anyways from the beginning. Let me stop all of them. It will consume the hardware resources here. Still it's showing not. Let me just reboot it once again. So what we require for installing the Vault here, we require the setup of the Vault. Okay, that is the setup. That is the Vault setup. This is the server setup, which is called the Vault setup. Let me just copy it inside our server. This is the setup file for our Vault server, and the version we are installing is 12.2. So this is a setup for our vault. Okay. And we require the license file as well. So let us navigate to that drive once again. So license is something which will basically allows us like how many components we can install up to, what is the size, sorry, how many users we can accommodate. So that will I will explain you later, but this is important. So I'll just copy the license as well. What else we require is the operator CD and master CD. Now, what are this operator CD and master CD? That I will also explain you. Let me just copy it first. And before that also we require the client, private or client, which is basically the application to access the world. Just like I have explained you, like for accessing Windows server, we require RDP client. Similarly, for accessing Vault, we require the private R client. So this is operator CD and master CD. Let us paste everything. Okay. Okay. Now we have Vault setup. We have a private R client. We have demo CD. So master CD. We have operator CD. Let us unzip everything here itself. Okay. Now, the first and foremost thing before installing the Vault is called the NIC card hardening. What is NIC card hardening? NIC card hardening is removing the additional protocols from your NIC card which are not needed. Okay. So if I navigate to the IPv4 protocol over here, this is my NIC card. As of now, you can see there is one NIC card or network adapter in this particular server. That means I have one static IP for this particular server. Now, if I just right click and go to properties over here, you can see there are a lot of protocols. There is a file and printer sharing. What is the purpose of this? Allows other computer to access resources on your computer using a Microsoft network. So basically this will allow my server to be visible, the vault server to be visible, and anyone can access my vault server. Or maybe they can move in files, move out files. So that is something I do not want at all. Okay, I want it to be completely isolated. So we were discussing about isolating network, how to isolate. That means the server should not be discoverable in the environment. So we will uninstall this protocol. Link layer topology discovery mapper input output driver used to discover and locate the PCs, devices, and network infrastructure component on the network. We don't want this as well. We will just retain IPv4 and IPv6. Rest all we will uninstall. Allows PC to be discovered. We don't want this. Network Microsoft Network Adapter Multiplexer Protocol provides a platform network adapter load balancing failover. We don't want this. So anything which is not needed for the vault functioning should be uninstalled. Let's uninstall this. So we will finally just limit it with IPv4 and IPv6. IPv6 I will uncheck because we are not using it. IPv4 we are using it. There are still something that needs to be done here. We will go to advanced. Wins enable LM host should be unchecked. Disable NetBIOS over TCP/IP. So this is called NIC card hardening, where we are making sure that none of the protocols apart from the needed ones are enabled. To the point guide over here, so you can refer this. So now you can see that he has also downsized the number of protocols which were not needed at all. The same thing we have done as well, disable NetBIOS over TCP IP. And now our server is good enough to install the vault. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll just go ahead on this particular setup. You can see this is the setup. Okay. I will right click and run as an administrator. So we require a .NET framework before installing the vault, which I missed to copy. Let me see that if I can copy now. This is the .NET framework. I should have copied it earlier because now we do not have the connectivity. But anyways, let's try it.
How it allowed you to copy the software because you have disabled all the things?
Yeah, it won't allow me anyways. Since the Windows was already open, that's the reason I was able to do that. If I cancel this window, I will not be able to see that. For an example, if I want to access it again from this file manager, I'll go to my file manager, my PC, VM host. Sorry. Since it was already opened, that's the reason it is able to, see me the options. Once I cancel this window, it will no more appear. So I will show you
Okay.
that part. And after that, there is one thing happens as well, which is called a hardening. Hardening is something which is basically add the restrictions to the operating system. So most of the times you might have observed that in your computer, in your office laptop or something, you are not able to access the Gmail or Yahoo or something. So this is basically the restrictions that they have imposed. Similarly, at OS level also, we can impose a restriction which is called the hardening. So by the time we will install the Cyberark Vault software, there is an option to install the hardening thing. So hardening is something which will restrict us to do anything. Like file sharing would be blocked. We will not be able to access any kind of internet thing from the vault. We will not be able to make any kind of traffic inbound or outbound enabled from the firewall. So hardening is something which will definitely block everything. We cannot install anything as well after the hardening happens. So now this .NET framework is installed. Let's restart our system. So now we are good to install this vault now. Let us cancel this once and go to server, setup, run as an administrator. Yeah, no problem. So now here we have two choices, standalone vault or cluster vault. I will explain you the cluster vault as well, but in the meantime we are going with a standalone vault. Standalone vault is something as the name suggests, it is a single vault that we are using it. So here we are installing the vault C program file x86 private arc. In the real-time installation, it would be pointed to D drive. Reason being, we do not want to interfere with the C drive because operating system is also hosted on the same drive. So better to keep in D drive, wherein you can dedicatedly created a directory for your vault. Then this is the place where the saves would be sitting. So again, do not put it in the C drive, put in a dedicated drive. So all of your saves would be sitting safe in a different drive without making any interference with the operating system. Then we need to point to the license file that we have already copied. So if I browse to this, in the desktop I have kept a license, so it should pick it up. Then operator CD is also kept in the desktop only. I will let you know tomorrow that what exactly the operator CD and master CD does. So today we'll just install it and we'll see more in details tomorrow. Let me just, here we have the demo master CD. Let me see. Let me unzip that as well. This is the operator CD. I'll just select it. Go next. Now you can see here there is something called remote terminal IP address. Okay, so this is something that I can also remotely control my vault without actually coming into the vault. Like I do not need to make an RDP to the vault and make some adjustment, maybe reading the configuration file or the log file. I can remotely check as that as well. So you can specify the IP from which you want to remotely control it. So as of now, we don't have any remote IP available. So I'll skip that, but I will show you that how it can be done later on. So also we can do that. So there is something called distributed vault. If you have multiple geographies and you want to create a distributed vault, we will install this thing, distributed vault internal communication platform. So here we are dealing with a standalone vault, so we will not do that. Now this is important thing, server vault server machine hardening. So Cyberark recommends to harden always because it will add lots of restrictions on the operating system in which you are installing the vault. So we will go ahead with the hardening. In the AWS lab that you would be doing, you do not harden because AWS does not support the hardening. The moment you perform the hardening, your AWS server would be inaccessible. So after the vault gets installed, we will see that what exactly it has done on the hardening. What are the different things which were restricted after the hardening. So there is a corresponding logs that gets generated after the installation. We will refer them. So now we would be prompted to specify the master password and the administrator password. I will explain you both of them. Let us install, first specify that. Never put any special characters in this. Just put alphanumeric. Later on you can change it. That's not a problem. So we are good to restart now. We have installed the vault. So we have installed the vault, guys. Now the vault installation is done.